All right, I've got 229. Mr. Secretary, I see you're on. I know we've got a lot of people in the waiting room. But first of all, I just want to say welcome to everybody. It's good to be here. It's good to be back. And y'all be patient with me as we go through this new process of having committees this way. Going to be a little different for all of us, but we'll get through it. The joint meetings have gone phenomenal. But before we do get started, I just want to welcome two members to this committee, Subcommittee on General Government, and that's Representative Stephen Meeks and Representative Stacey Evans. So
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here. Hope it's not raining down your way.
It is not yet, but awful cloudy.
Good deal. Good deal. All righty. Well, before we get started, I just do want to thank Media Services. I know they've done a lot here to make this all happen, and everybody's trying to do some kind of format this way, and everything has been going really well. So just want to give a big thank you there, and also to the House Budget Office, as we've got this budget on a fast track. And trying to get through the information as fast as we can. So I want to give a shout out to them, and especially David Hartman that works with all of our agencies and the General Government Subcommittee. Big thank you to him. I know he's been making a lot of calls and trying to get everybody together for this meeting. So that being said, Mr. Secretary, I see you're with us. If you want to get us kicked off, we'll get going, and the floor is yours. And one other thing before I forget, if you're a committee member and you have a question, if you will, type that in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll try to recognize you. You'll need to unmute and then mute back again. So that said, Mr. Secretary, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and fellow I was going to say fellow representatives, but those days have passed. But representatives, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today. Obviously, when we were looking at the budgets together a year ago, none of us could have anticipated what the ensuing months would hold. When we all came together back in June, our agency did our part, trimming our budget to help assure that our state comes through the pandemic in as good a shape as possible. Like you, I'm happy to see that our state's coffers are healthy. The people of Georgia have seen the least impact on their personal incomes compared to every other state in the union, according to the latest statistics from the Department of Commerce's Bureau of Economic Analysis. Given that, I am very pleased that the governor's budget, both amended 2021 and 2022 budgets, essentially keep us where we were when we passed the budget last summer. On page 16 of section 43, that's our tracking sheet. And the top of the list is our corporations. What you'll notice is that we now have 0 state dollars, as you can see on 43.1. We are completely self-sufficient. 100% of those operations are paid out of retained earnings, retained revenue. We are still at a record pace of corporate formations, and we are heading into our renewal season and anticipate a successful one. Since the kickoff on January 1, that'll go through April 1st, and we're already, as of yesterday, 141,223 annual registrations that have been filed. We currently have 1,098,610 total entities registered here in Georgia. On a very positive note, we have seen record filings. From the start of the fiscal year, we have seen 167,813 new entities have been formed. And we compare that to the same period previous, we had 90,476 business formations. So that's an 85% increase. Now, some of that obviously is due to pent-up demand coming out of the March and April slowdown, but it does show you that the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well here in Georgia. We're in good shape in that division. Of course, we have been spending a great deal of time on elections. I think more than any of us anticipated. We knew that we had a heavy lift rolling out the new verifiable paper ballot system that was only complicated by the pandemic. It is covered there in Section 43.2. There were county issues in the June primary, mainly focused in a single county. But by November and then January, we had addressed the issues with the counties, and we saw record turnouts while preserving all three forms of voting: secure absentee, early in person, and election day voting. We saw limited lines in the general election and in the runoff. We leveraged an existing state contract with ESRI, that's ESRI, which is the GSI software firm, to build out a tool that tracked wait times around the state, as well as help dispatch support to polling locations that may have needed it. The average wait time in November on election day was down to 3 minutes statewide on election day in the afternoon. The pandemic obviously impacted how many voted. Nearly 1 million, nearly 50% of Georgia's primary voters voted via absentee in June. In November, over 1.3 million, or about 25% of the general election voters, cast absentee ballots. And then finally in January, we had a little less than 1.1 million, which again was about that 25% voters mailed in their absentee ballots. Each election saw us getting back to more normal voting patterns, what we have historically seen over the years. In June, we saw only about 880,000 voters on election day. In November, we saw that number move up to 975,000. And in the January runoff, we saw the highest turnout when we had 1.3 million voters that came out, again with virtually no lines. We worked with the county so that the administration of these elections worked for the voters. We are continuing to focus on enhancing security around all of our election systems. This month, our IT infrastructure and security teams transferred our eNet voter registration system to a new next generation, more secure data center. We're also taking the next steps to leverage our membership, ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, which was part of House Bill 316 passed 2 years ago. ERIC will allow us to share data between 30 member states and the District of Columbia. This data sharing will allow us to execute list maintenance more efficiently and objectively. As part of the security earlier this year, I requested that the legislature pass a law to move us away from the subjective signature match to identify voters requesting an absentee to a more objective measure using a unique identifier like the driver's license number or a state issued ID. Taking away the subjectivity and having a direct database to verify voters is a better way to go and will help instill confidence in the process. I know that there are bills currently in the hopper to move in that direction, and I am all for it. That said, you need to be aware it will require some investment for enhancements to eNet to allow for it to be administered and allow us to have the visibility to assure it's being administered properly at the local level. Until we know what the final law specifically says, we can only make some estimates as to the potential cost. We had to continue litigation costs that were essentially an unbudgeted expense. Working with DOAS, we were able to move the storage of the old DREs, which are still having to preserve due to the still ongoing lawsuit from 2017 in front of Judge Totenberg. So far, we've had to pay from our regular elections operating budgets $391,858 for the preservation. Further, we anticipate more unknown costs based on litigation moving forward. Fortunately, most cases that were filed concerning the 2020 election have gone nowhere. Two high-profile ones that could have had higher costs attached were voluntarily withdrawn by the plaintiffs. In the case of the election challenge, the plaintiffs withdrew all claims literally the day before the hearing, where they would have had to present evidence. Now, I know there are questions from elections that move us directly to section 43.3, which is investigations. We have 278 total open cases in elections investigations. Of those, 195 covered the time frame for the 2020 general election and runoff. While we investigate all credible claims, one of the issues slowing us down is having to chase phantom claims. rather than being able to focus on potential illegal votes. As an example, there was a specific claim that signature match was not followed in Cobb County. That is the only specific claim in a specific county in the entire state. Because of that claim, I went to Governor Kemp and requested additional resources from GBI to aid my own post-certified law enforcement investigators to conduct that signature audit. The combined SOS and GBI teams reviewed 15,118 signatures. They found 2 that should have been sent a cure notification. And of those 2, both were actually voted by the proper voter. This audit for a single county required over 1,000 man-hours. Also, that was about a 10% randomized audit of the 150,000 ballots that were cast. So I wanted everyone to understand that real investigations take time. They require reviewing evidence like videos, log files from computers, reading affidavits, interviewing witnesses, and so forth. In my office, we currently have 20 investigators that go into the field and 2 supervisors that have to coordinate and review the work of the investigators. Please keep in mind that there are only 2 investigators that are statutorily specifically state election board investigators. The rest have other duties, mainly around the professional licensing boards. And those type of investigations are tied very often to health and safety, so they are important when it comes to protection of all Georgians. Given the questions surrounding the 2020 elections, we have devoted more investigations than ever to elections-related work. There are currently 281 open PLB cases, and there are currently 278 open election cases. That's a total of over 550 cases, or 25 cases per investigator. But for a historical perspective, for total cases overall, there were 997 PLB cases and 161 election cases in 2018. In 2019, there were 1,033 PLB cases and 93 election cases. Finally, in 2020, there are 1,099 PLB cases with a big jump in election cases to 331, more than double what we saw coming out of the contentious 2018 elections. So currently, to give you a status report, we have 3 state election board meetings set back to back over 3 weeks in February. These will include cases from previous years and from 2020. As with every year, I would say that we could always use more investigators. My office also made an offline request to replace many of our aging vehicles, many of which are more than 5 years old or have over 135,000 miles in them. Another issue from both our investigators and inspectors, they are burning through PPE at a high rate as they have to physically go to locations and interact with people to do their jobs. The agency as a whole received a small allocation of PPE in the late spring, but we have no CARES allocations for investigations to cover that cost, so it's coming out of our regular budget. Moving on to administration, section 43.4 in your tracking. That includes our capital staff and administrative groups. The cuts made in the summer have not affected operations negatively. Much of the administration staff have focused on elections for obvious reasons, but we are seeing that draw down to allow for more focus on other areas as well. Our largest department by headcount is the Professional Licensing Board, PLB, which is section 43.5. With that, we eliminated several positions in the last budget to meet the budgeting goals that were set for us. We are now in the middle of an overhaul of how we do business in the administrative work that is done at PLB. We want to be customer focused and move people through the licensing process more efficiently in each of the license areas we issue. It will take some time, but I think we'll see improvements moving forward. We're already made good progress leveraging technology for our inspectors using tablets and online forms and replacing the reams and reams of paper they used to go through. It's better for the inspector and it's easier for the licensees as well. That's not been an easy task, Since entering this office, I have asked all of my departments to find smarter, better, less expensive ways to serve Georgians. We're going to reinvest the savings in more training and updated systems. Changing any long-standing bureaucratic systems will not be an easy task. However, I believe it is important to change with the times and bring our people and processes more fully into the 21st century. Finally, our securities division in section 43.6, it's a very small department, but it is very highly effective. I appreciate your support in keeping securities at its current funding level. We spend $731,773 in this entire department. It brings in about $12 million to Georgia's general coffers. Cuts here would be risky. Our securities enforcement allows us to keep those dollars here in Georgia. If we fail to enforce those dollars, we will go to the federal government instead. The last thing we want to do is lose an efficient revenue generator to the federal government. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. With me is Gabriel Sterling, our Chief Operating Officer and CFO, and our Controller, Robert Orange. We stand ready to answer any questions you may have. We're here to provide additional detail that you may need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. And again, if you were late joining in and you're a committee member, if you do have a question, just raise your hand or type something real quick in the chat box and we'll get you recognized, and you need to unmute and then mute back. But maybe just to kind of start it off, Mr. Secretary, with the current workload you mentioned on the investigators, how long is it going to take us to catch up with the current staff that you have in place as they move forward?
Well, our biggest concern right now is getting the 3 election committee SEB meetings done. Some of those cases actually go back to 17 and 18. So we need to finish up that backlog, and we had then 2020 cases also. We had a few remainders there. They'll be cleaned up. We need to get those cleaned up and then continue to flesh out all 2020. Also, we are behind in the nursing, and that's very important because that gets to public health and also public safety. And so that is another focus that we have right now. Gabriel Sterling was brought back on board full-time as Chief Operating Officer. He will be down in Macon, spending a couple of days there next week. We'll be looking at putting more hands to bear on that, and also providing as many investigators as soon as we can free them up from current assignments.
And you mentioned there was over 550 cases.
We have 550
investigations.
We have 550 investigations right now ongoing.
And
About 50-50 PLB versus elections.
Okay. And so that would be about 20, you said 25 per investigator that you currently have, but that's not their, they have other jobs and other cases,
Well, we have the total 550 cases, and we have 20 investigators to handle all those.
Okay. All right. Well, I know just real briefly, and then we'll see if anybody else has got anything. As far as our counties go, I know our counties have had some extra expenses incurred. Could y'all speak to what they have incurred, and is there anything out there for them to help them with any of those expenses as they've gone through the processes over this last election cycle?
Well, last year we had CARES money that came in, and we had some HAVA dollars that came in, and we had grant programs with the counties. And so we did the best we can with the limited resources. We didn't have it in our budget other than if we had HAVA dollars, which is a drawdown from the feds, or the CARES dollars that came in. And I know that many of the counties were pushed. Some of the counties that maybe are more affluent had other accesses, and the commissioners were to fund them. But I know that many of our smaller counties were really pushed on that. It is an issue. It was a very costly, just dealing with the pandemic, all the safety protocols you had to put in place.
Okay. All righty. Do any committee members have any further questions?
I do. Representative Smith,
Chairman Smith, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Secretary of State Rathensperger, for your presentation. I'm getting a lot of phone calls from my constituents wanting to know where the cost came from to pay for the absentee ballot request cards that were sent out last March.
All that was paid for coming out of HAVA dollars or CARES grant funding. Just like we're like the counties, we didn't have that covered, but we had it, obviously with the federal HAVA grant money that we had available for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, I can speak more specifically on that one. Chairman Smith, that for the first round of that was about, I'll give you the exact details, but I want to say it was close to a $6 million or a $5.5 million investment of CARES dollars to get that first round done. And Chairman Watson, we also picked up all of the rollover costs, everything at the 65 and over. The Secretary's office with those CARES dollars picked up all those costs for the counties, which saved them a few $1 million on top of that over this entire cycle. So I just want to put that back out there, that the Secretary's office took a lot of dollars off that would have been on those counties otherwise, including the grant money that he mentioned specifically.
Thank you.
I think I see another question about the election investigations. How many of those have been completed?
They'll be brought before the State Election Board. Our first meeting, I believe, was February 10th.
Okay.
And completed is a loaded word, because in our mind, until we bring the State Election Board, they're not completed. So we have a bunch that have been closed out. We'd have to give an exact number from our investigators. I don't want to hazard an estimate right now, but we have those numbers. We'll try to get them to you offline if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. And then you mentioned, Mr. Secretary, the PPE that your folks were having to use. So whether they were doing investigations or with the licensing or whatever it may be, you were using a lot of PPE. Do you have any number on that, or what y'all spend as far as PPE goes to date?
Well, I was specifically talking about the unfunded money for PPE for our investigators. Gabriel, do you have that number handy, or should we?
The one we'd get for 1 month was $8,400. But again, I think if Robert's not on here, I don't see him on here. He's supposed to be on here, but he has a specific number. But I want to spitball it around $8,000 a month, and we can get you that specific answer as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
About $100,000 a year.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any further questions?
The Representative Parsons was waving his hands in the window right there, it looked like.
Okay. Chairman Parsons, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I finally got this mute button on. It screwed me up. I wanted to ask, Joe and I both used the web portal off the Secretary of State's website for requesting our absentee ballots. And it seemed to work really well. I mean, flawlessly for us. I didn't even know that the ability was there to get an email when we dropped ours off at a Dropbox, and got text rather that they'd been received. Our absentee ballots had been received and processed. But anyway, my question is how not how successful, I know it was successful, what kind of percentage, I guess, of the absentee ballots were actually requested over that portal? I'm just curious.
Well, I just want to really give a shout out to our staff. Gabriel Sterling really ran point on that. We got that set up very quickly. First of all, it's photo ID because it connects people with the online portal back to Department of Driver Services. So it is secure. And that's one of the concerns that people have, making sure that it is secure. We had, I believe Gabriel said it was up to 65% of the new users during the runoff were going through the online portal. And so once we got it stood up, for November election, we started having more and more people using it. And we think that's an excellent way of going forward because it's fast, secure, and in less than 30 seconds, you can actually request your absentee ballot.
Okay, thank you. Put my mute back on here now.
Yeah, there you go. Anybody else? All righty. Well, Mr. Secretary, we appreciate your comments today and your very detailed description of your budget, and look forward to talking to you more as we move through the process. Gabe, thank you for being on here as well, and all your folks. If nobody's got anything else, we'll move on to the next agency. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank y'all.
If you need any more information, just please circle back and we'll get it back to you.
All right, good deal.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Department of Natural Resources. Commissioner Mark Williams, are you online?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can. Good deal. Thank you for being here with us, and I hope you're not having as hard a time as talking to a computer as I am, but I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the committee for being able to present our amended 21 budget today. Department of Natural Resources can be found under section 34, pages 11 and 12 in the tracking document. And we have a few primary changes that I'd like to make you and the committee aware of. Under departmental administration section, the entire department is proposed to receive $1 million to replace vehicles. We'll evaluate our fleet and replace approximately 45 vehicles across all of our DNR divisions. And as always, Mr. Chairman, the committee, we appreciate y'all's investment and to help us keep updating our aging fleet of vehicles. So thank you. Next, you will see under the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program header an increase of $3,430,466. This increase makes the program's trust fund whole in comparison to FY19 collections and meets the law's requirement for allocations. Per the founding legislation that was confirmed in the 2018 statewide constitutional referendum, the state treasurer credits to the trust fund 40% of all monies received by the state from the sales and use tax collected by sporting goods stores. In the immediately preceding year, the fund is based on the preceding year. So in total, the FY21 fund allocation is now $19,430,466 under this recommendation. And since the Outdoor Stewardship Program is still fairly new, I wanted to give a brief refresher and overview for members of the committee. The Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program provides annual designated funding to projects that support conservation, outdoor recreation, and land acquisition. Applicants and recipients of funds may include state agencies, local governments, verified recreation authorities, and nonprofit organizations. The first grant cycle in 2020 awarded grant funds to impactful projects from Forsyth County to Meriwether County all the way down to Camden County. We are now in the second grant cycle and look forward to delivering a new slate of proposed projects to the Senate and House Appropriations subcommittees for final confirmation by the end of the month. Wrapping up our enhancements for amended 21 recommendation, the DNR's Wildlife Resources Division is budgeted an increase of $493,580 from Lifetime Sportsman's license sales to support the Wildlife Endowment Fund. Mr. Chairman, overall, there are very few changes to DNR's mostly flat amended 21 budget. And for this, we are appreciative to our governors and the legislative support and sound fiscal management during this severe crisis. The challenges over the last year facing the state's natural resource and DNR operations, from weather to COVID-19, have been substantial. However, by closely following all the public health directives, DNR was able to protect its employees and customers while never closing any offices or properties. This allowed DNR to continue its mission of serving and protecting Georgians and our natural resources at a high level. DNR's work only became more important as the pandemic pushed many Georgians and visitors outdoors to seek physical and mental health while still social distancing. This resulted in record visitation, license sales, reservation sales, and game and fish harvest. In this most different of years, DNR is more essential than ever, as this incredible demand has been placed on our services and properties and ultimately our people. Thankfully, under excellent leadership across all our offices and divisions, the department showed great flexibility and innovation in creating new opportunities to serve the citizens of Georgia, as well as visitors to all of your districts. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, you can remain confident that your DNR is welcoming and protecting your constituents with professionalism, integrity, and world-class service, even in these darkest of days. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me to speak with y'all and share about our important work here at DNR, and be happy to take any questions.
All right, well, thank you, Commissioner, and you do a great job over there, and we all appreciate that. I know I've had multiple comments about how our parks and how well they've looked, and the experiences that people have had. And I know I mentioned this yesterday in the big hearing as far as maintenance and repairs go to our parks. I know that they've been at all-time high usage, which means there's going to be more wear and tear naturally. Are you good in that department, or how are things there?
Yeah, well, Mr. Chairman, great question. We do a lot of our maintenance and updating through our bonding package, and we have a good recommended bonding package this year. I failed to mention yesterday, I need to give a shout out to a group. It's about 20,000 members strong that help us at our parks. Actually, probably couldn't do our mission without them. It's our friends of our Georgia State Parks, and that's a huge workforce of volunteers. But with park receipts up and visitation up, that has freed up some dollars for, ongoing maintenance, but no real trouble spots. We work through our backlog as we do every year.
Gotcha. And you had around 8 million in your bond package for maintenance and repairs. Is that right? Something like that? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We just want to make sure people have good experiences while they're there.
Yes, sir.
Good deal. And again, if anybody's got any questions, if you'll wave some hands, and I think Chairman Hatchett, do you have a question? Was there the question was, Commissioner, was there an increase in the use of out-of-state parks during the pandemic? If so, was there an increase in funds received for campsite rentals?
I would say yes to both of those, although we don't track specific car tags. We get a feel because it was online registration, so we know their addresses. So I haven't tracked that specifically for out-of-state guests, but I feel quite sure that went up. And the answer to the second question is yes, we had an increase in camping receipts. All the categories on our parks were up. Yurts, cabins, all of them.
Gotcha. Good deal. Chairman Barr?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I have a question about the vehicles. I know many of you got your Rangers drive a pickup. According to my math, that's 22,000. Is that going to cover all the vehicles that you need? That million?
That's a good question. Yes, it will. We have internal policies on, how we rotate our vehicles. And so we did a pretty good analysis of what we needed for this year and made that recommendation. So yes, we're good with that figure.
Okay. The Commissioner, somebody else have something? On the GOSA funds that were added back, did that cover all your administrative costs? Are we good there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
That made it completely whole.
Completely whole. Okay. Just want to make sure things are good there. That's all the questions I had, Commissioner. I don't see anybody else jumping up and down. I do
Mr.
have one.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, back to GOSA, our board, based on the statute, will vote on the projects next Tuesday, which I think is the 26th or 27th. And then we'll be delivering those to you.
Okay. I see another quick question here, and it may be from some of the comments with the increased usage of our parks and wildlife areas. Do you see a need for any additional DNR agents? And how are you situated there?
We've been able to fund, and I want to thank y'all and the governor's office, because we've been able to do it. We went several years without being able to do an academy. But I think I'm looking at Walter, the last 3 years, we've had an academy every year, and we have one going on now. I think it's 10 new rangers. And so we're getting back up to our strength. We had a lot of retirements. I think it was last year. And so we're getting back up there. So we're good in that regard as well. We're able to do an academy every year, which is very important to us.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, Commissioner, I don't see any other questions. I think we're good. Thank you for being here. Appreciate the job you're doing. Always good to talk to you. Hope to see you in person sometime soon. And we'll turn it over to Director Dunn if you're finished.
Look forward to it. Thank y'all.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Director Dunn, good to see
Thank
you.
you, Chairman Watson, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the governor's amended fiscal year 21 budget recommendations for the Environmental Protection Division. I know you got your tracking sheets, but I've also prepared a small slide deck with some details about EPD's budget. If it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring that up.
Yes, sir.
Give me 1 second here. Can you see my screen there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me start off on, go to the third screen here. So on your tracking sheet, EPD has 3 programs under DNR. As Mark said, DNR is section number 34. EPD's 3 programs are the Environmental Protection Program, which is program 34.3, the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, which is program 34.5, and the Solid Waste Trust Fund, which is program 34.9. The base budget for those 3 programs is listed here on the slide. It's about $124 million in total funds. About 32% of that are state appropriated funds. That's about 40 million, or 32% of the total are appropriated funds. Our largest fund source are from retained fees. Listed in your budget document is other funds. That's roughly $55 million, representing 44% of our budget. And the remaining part of our budget, the remaining 24% of our budget, are federal funds, which constitute about $30 million. Not reflected in the budget is the approximately $29 million in fees that we collect and remit to the Treasury each year. These are fees above and beyond the $55 million that we retain. Let me provide a very high level of how these funds are expended. EPD has 691 total employees. Most of these employees are STEM professionals, environmental specialists, engineers, geologists, lab scientists, and modelers. That create some unique challenges for recruitment and retention, because a lot of folks, these employees with these skill sets are in very, very high demand. We are organized in 3 branches by environmental media. We have an air branch, a land branch, and a water branch. Most branch staff are located here on Capitol Hill or in our offices at the Trade Port, which is right down 75 near the airport. We also have 7 district offices located throughout the state. The district offices will handle many complaint investigations, emergency response, and inspection and compliance activities related to our permittees. We operate a laboratory on Peachtree Corners. The laboratory works with all environmental media, but most of their work is the required water quality testing for our 2,400 public drinking water systems located throughout the state. And the final bucket of the way we're organized is administration, which houses all of our enterprise functions such as HR, IT, finance, and legal. This slide shows expenditures by object class. I'll be very brief here. About 80% of our spend is on personnel and contractual services. Typically, our staff personal services are about half of our spend, and contractual services are about 30% of our spend. And just as the last kind of background slide, this shows EPD's expenditures over time from fiscal year 2000 to the present. You can see our budget's been basically in a moving, our expenditure has been moving in a very tight range for the last 4 years. Mr. Chairman, we have one change in the amended budget that's located at 34.3.1. And this change, the caption is to provide one-time funds to replace 26 vehicles and lab equipment for a total of $2.5 million. This was an agency request. I will note that we originally requested it as part of the capital budget to be funded with GO bonds, but OPB, when they were determining whether it should go in the capital budget or the cash budget, decided to put it in the cash budget for the amended fiscal year. So that's why you see this here. It would normally be in the capital budget. Just to break that $2.5 million request down, a little over $612,000 of that $2.5 million is for the replacement of 26 vehicles in EPD's fleet. We have 208 vehicles in total. Average age of those vehicles currently is about 9 years. About half of the fleet is eligible for replacement using DOAS's replacement methodology. Of those 101 that are eligible for replacement, again, this request will cover 26 of those vehicles, and all 26 of the vehicles identified for replacement in this request have mileage over 100,000 miles and are 10 years old or older. And the remaining part of that $2.5 million request is for the replacement and enhancement of lab equipment. About 4 years ago, we began an equipment upgrade for our lab in the capital budget. At the time we began this project, much of our equipment at the lab was no longer supported by the manufacturer and could not communicate with modern lab management software. So we've done a good job over the last 3 years of upgrading our lab equipment. And this year we're focused on 11 pieces of equipment at the lab for a total cost of about $1.9 million. Of those 11 pieces of equipment, 9 of those units are to replace existing instruments that have exceeded the manufacturer's useful life recommendation. And 2 pieces of equipment that aren't replacement, they're actually new pieces of equipment for our drinking water program and are needed to keep up with new regulatory requirements or to process samples more efficiently. Mr. Chairman, that is the changes we have in our FY21 budget, and a little bit about the base, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you or committee members may have.
Okay. Well, thank you, Director Dunn, for that information. I do have 1 or 2 quick questions, and some members may have some as well, but to give everybody a minute or two. I know we talked about this last fiscal year. You were able to move some state funds over to federal funds and save some money there, and just kind of wanted to circle back with you on that. Is that created any new difficulties for you since we last talked, or how are things in that area?
I mean, as you recall, we had a lot of swapping back and forth in terms of replacing state funds and federal funds to meet some of the budget reduction requirements. And most of those cuts were in contracts. We've been able, and some of those were in travel. Of course, travel has been very easy to meet this year. The real test will probably be next fiscal year to see how that really impacts. But so far, we've been able to accommodate those reductions in contracts in personnel without any major impact on our core business.
Good deal. Okay. Chairman Smith, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Director Dunn. Y'all do a yeoman's work and don't always get a lot of recognition. So my first question is very practical. Who's going to replace Lauren Curry?
Well,
We need the name and the number and all like
right,
that.
right. And losing Lauren was a big blow to me and our agency, and we're trying to move ahead. And I know she's been a key point of contact for members of this committee as well as your committee, Chairman Smith. I can say we are working very diligently on a replacement. We're working through some folks now, and hopefully we'll have an announcement here very, very soon. But we're just as anxious as you are to have someone new on board.
Thank you. We wish her well in her new job. And yes, we'll be able to figure out where she is. That means
Absolutely.
we'll also come after you. So
Right.
thank you for that. But then the area, speaking to Lauren, moving on to another title, I know retention and recruitment is a challenge for EPD. Your talent gets rated as soon as they get traded, and you're constantly having to recruit again. So is there a strategy there? Have you had conversations with the governor's office? What do we need to know about that? Because it impacts everything we do for the citizens of Georgia. So
thank you, Chairwoman Smith, for the question. And you're right, this is probably retention and recruitment is our #1 challenge. I heard yesterday, I had the volume on while I was doing some other work. I heard Department of Corrections had a turnover rate of 97%. We're nowhere near 97%. Our turnover rate is up. It's about 16% currently. But I will tell you, just in the last 6 months, I've lost 6 program managers. These are managers of programs, important programs. I've lost 6 program managers to the EPA. And these folks are leaving strictly due to pay. These folks could increase their pay about 30% and don't have to manage people. It's a much less stressful job. It's an easier job and considerable more pay. So it's a real challenge for us to keep our employees, not only prevent them from joining EPA, but also, private sector companies, consulting companies, and the like. It is a real challenge. And again, our big challenge is pay. I mentioned before, we recruit STEM professionals, and the pay we have for engineers, geologists, environmental specialists, lab specialists, and modelers is not competitive at all with the private sector.
thank you for that. And to my chairman, Mr. Chairman, at some point, can we do a study of that? I don't know what the solution is, more money, but we would need to back it up with data and research. And so I hope soon we can look into it as an appropriations committee.
Yes, ma'am. I think we will. And David, as you know, will kind of be working maybe on some of that as well. I know this seems to be a common theme that we're hearing, especially with a lot of our general government agencies. And I kind of want to follow up on your question with Director Dunn. I know that y'all had a lot of duties and things, regulatory things that y'all had to do, and expectations even this past year. And with the pandemic, I know it was not even, it wasn't easier for sure, but how was it this past year? You have been shorthanded and you've been having to deal with a lot of environmental issues. Have you been able to maintain the ability to stay up? Or
Yeah, we had severe challenges during the shutdown, during that roughly 6 weeks of shutdown back in April, May timeframe, where it was very difficult for us to visit sites and the like. But outside of that, I think we responded well. Much of our permitting work can be done remotely. That's not an issue for people to work remotely and complete their work there. Our inspection work, of course, has to be on site, but we've had lots of cooperation with the regulated community in terms of doing that in a way where our employees feel safe and their employees feel safe as well. So I think we've been able to adjust very, very well.
okay, good deal. Does any committee members have any further questions? Director Dunn, I'm not seeing any at the moment. So I think you're good. We appreciate the job you're doing, and for sure to echo what Chairman Smith said, if you'll please let us know when you get Lauren's new person or the new Lauren, please let us know where we can have that contact to reach out and get questions answered. But thank you for the job y'all do, and we'll be talking soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. All righty. Well, next up, we've got the Commissioner of our Insurance Department. Commissioner King, are you with us?
Yes, I am, sir. How you doing, Mr. Chairman?
Good, good. Good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present our request for the FY 2021 amended budget. I first want to thank you all. I want to take the opportunity to thank you all for the support of this office in the previous budget. You all gave us the tools to be able to adapt before the COVID pandemic struck our country. And thanks to y'all's committee's efforts, you gave us the tools so we could adapt very quickly. As you related, y'all remember last year's presentation, our agency had been neglected for many years as far as automation and IT. And so I want to highlight a few of those issues before I dig in, and it'll be very brief.
Go ahead.
You gave us one-time funds for additional flexibility in last year's budget, and we were able to use them to better respond to our COVID-19 services that we provide our state. We established an agency-wide telework policy by providing laptops, increased security, so we could continue operating remotely. But also we were able to put tracking to be able to track the productivity of our employees while they're working remotely. So there was a checks and balances process through this IT improvements. We were able to begin the process of receiving electronic payments and transitioning away from the outdated paper processing across our agency. Our manufactured home team was able to update their methods to practice social distancing during their inspections while maintaining their federal HUD requirements. And thanks to our increased IT capabilities, our safety fire inspectors were able to conduct virtual inspections and make new construction inspections a priority to keep business moving forward. While our inspections have been temporarily, we've had to avoid COVID hotspots like our hospitals and nursing homes. We've used this time to provide them with additional continuing education and shift their work to other businesses where either because of close downs or shutdowns, we were still conducting those inspections to make sure that those businesses will continue to be supported by this agency. In addition, the one-time IT funds allowed us to provide Wi-Fi access across our agency and launch a brand new customer-friendly and easy navigable website. We implemented a new surplus line system on January 1st of this year that allows us to more closely track those payments and bring additional money into the state's general fund. And our plan review team can accept plans electronically, and our agent licensing program can now process applications and accept payments electronically. I'm proud of the work of our team for this agency that's provided in this year. And so we're glad that we're finally in the 21st century when it comes to our technology. As far as the amended FY 2021 budget, we have a few requested items that I'd like to highlight in our tracking sheet. And we are in section 29, page 9 of your document, sir. I will start with on line 29.1.1, that additional $191,899. That pays for the salary and the benefits of the previous commissioner while his criminal case is still pending. On line 29.3.1, this increase is of $100,000 and offsets lost agency funds as a result of not being able to complete inspections of nursing homes. We normally receive these funds through contract from DCH, and we expect these inspections to restart in March. Lastly, on line 29.3.2, we are actually returning just under $77,000 to the general fund. These funds had initially been budgeted to make up for expected lost revenue in the manufactured housing inspections. However, as I said previously, we were able to complete those inspections while maintaining social distancing. Again, I thank you all so much for the ability to be able to communicate with you all and talk to you a little bit about the highlights. But I really wanted to thank this committee's efforts in helping us innovate our agency so we could deal with this pandemic. But this is good money spent for making sure that our agency can operate efficiently. My goal is to make the most out of an efficient and responsible agency. I want it to be the most responsive agency in state government, and we're committed to putting the funds that you provide us towards that end. I'll be glad to answer any questions you all may have, and I'll have my Chief Financial Officer, Chad DeVella, also here to help me with additional specifics if you need.
All right, well, thank you, Commissioner. You actually answered almost all of my questions I had, so I'm trying to think of something right here. I don't want to let you off the hook too easy, but maybe could you? I know there's been some discussion about agency fees and raising some of those fees. Don't know when the last time they were raised, and is that something you can talk about or touch on, or are we still looking at that? I know that'll probably require some legislation, but can you speak to that real quick?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at a range of fees to bring them up to date. And so far, the ones that were within my authority, we have implemented. There's some that we will, we're continuing to look at and make that recommendation to the legislature to make sure that we stay current with not only our states surrounding us, but it also, helps defray some of the costs to the general taxpayer for the services that we provide. But we're looking really hard at that as a way to change a little bit of our strategy, how to fund some of the operations that we have in our agency.
That's right. That's right. Okay. On that, you mentioned your surplus line. Do you have any early numbers yet or projections on what that's going to bring in?
So we just started that this January, so it's really early. But sir, we're looking at other states that implemented it, and the numbers really look good. We were depending on the industry to be honest brokers and self-reporting, and we know that is not a good way to do business as a state agency. So this will help us get some real, good comparisons using a number of databases, not only inside of our state, but using, looking at these companies as they do business across the Southeast.
Okay, good. Chairman Smith, did you have a question?
I do, but I didn't raise my hand, so I'm curious as to how you know I did.
I'm a fast learner, Chairman Smith.
So this is a little bit of a humorous question here to Commissioner King. How do you do virtual building fire inspections?
Actually, what we do is that first of all, we get the electronic plans. So our engineers and our team looks at, and then we have the staff of that location virtually take that camera and take a photograph of this part of that. Now, and we only do that in some locations because obviously the businesses have been closed, like hotels and large restaurants. We can do that safely. And so our employees go in there, get donned PPE, they go in and conduct inspection. But for example, there's some locations where if we only have to have to take a look at one specific item inside, we actually have somebody in that staff to take us and verify and walk us in with a camera and take a picture or videotape so our inspectors can take a look at it. Just this is a way to have multiple ways to look at an inspection, but that's been our strategy. I don't see that as being our permanent strategy, but this is how we've been able to innovate through COVID, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. That was a good question. Anybody else? Well, Commissioner, I'm not seeing any more questions.
Sir, y'all hurt my feelings. You didn't ask me if I needed
I
more
know,
people.
I tried, but
you my brother in DNR. I had an answer for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the job you're doing. I know you've had to make a lot of changes over there, and it's been exciting to watch and see. So thank you for the job you're doing over there at the Department of Insurance. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The partnership that you all have given us the tools to be able to do that, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next up, we've got Commissioner Moore with the Department of Driver Services. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How are you doing this afternoon? And certainly thank you for inviting us to come on and make some remarks, of course, and thank the committee, as well as the governor for his support, the legislature for their support for the department on a number of things that we had to overcome this past year. I'm going to try to share my screen if I can get a presentation up real quickly. It works. Are you able to see it?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Just like every agency, the Department of Driver Services has done everything that we can to adapt to the new circumstances of COVID-19. As an agency, we closed back in March for roughly 10 or 11 days before we could get the adequate PPE to open back up April 1st. And our staff has been working very hard since opening back up. And I'm going to speak to some things that are occurring this week that's a little bit different. But as I always do, I like to give sort of an overview as to where we are as a state. We have 8.296 million drivers that are valid on our roadways. And I'm happy to report that 8.213 of them are Real ID enrolled, or 99%. You might remember this past October was supposed to be the original deadline that if you got on an airport, or excuse me, if you got on a domestic flight, you were going to have to be Real ID compliant. Well, most states had not nearly gotten the number of citizens registered to be Real ID, but I'm happy to report that Georgia leads the entire nation in having our population Real ID compliant, which certainly helps as we, whenever that deadline is re-established, obviously it was delayed based on COVID-19, our citizens will be ready to travel. It's very important that I note that 2.4 million people were served face-to-face last year. And you might ask how many of those occurred after COVID-19, 1.7 million. So I'm really excited that the staff, through the use of PPE, we were able to get customers served even in this pandemic. And what I'll also note is nearly 1.2 of them also used our online services or our DDS to go. And that's really important because as we transition as a state with Real ID compliance, that gives our customers the opportunity to utilize online services versus having to come into an office. So we're excited to see that number, but 1 million of those 1.2 million customers actually used that service since, again, COVID-19 hit. We're continuing to see large volumes, especially on Tuesday, which is our peak day. Roughly 14,000 people come in on those particular days. There are only 2 requests that the department has in the amended 21 budget. And we think that the requests are very much needed from the standpoint of what we're currently seeing. Our contact center before COVID-19 was one of the busiest in the state. As you might can see, that green line represents the number of calls that we got during calendar year 19. 1.2 million calls. We have 55 agents, roughly, 61 total staff, but 55 of those folks are answering phones. Like many call center operations, that's a high turnover area, and we are looking to enhance our call center by adding technology to it. And in your tracking document on line 21.2.1, this is page 6 of 17 on your tracking document. You'll note that the department is requesting $600,000 for the purpose of acquiring a chatbot technology or artificial intelligence. This is not, this would be what's considered a voice bot. If a citizen were to call our call center seeking a question from the Department of Driver Services, it would sound as if though a person is actually answering that call. So we're very excited about the potential of technology that is out there. We've explored and looked at several of them, and we're hopeful that if this request passes, we can quickly implement and impact that blue number that you see in this graph, which is the more than 800,000 additional calls, or 73% increase that we've seen since COVID-19. You might look at that graph and say, what's causing those spikes and those valleys? It follows COVID-19 from the standpoint of when information is going out to the public that might make things look a little bit more challenging as far as coming out. So we see more people coming into the office in October before, and as soon as obviously late November, we started to see uptick in the number of COVID cases. We saw people again trying to perform their transactions online, which sometimes results in a follow-up call to ensure that transaction actually went through. So we very much feel like this 600,000 will enhance our call center from the agents that are answering the calls, take away those less complex calls that are typically coming into our call center, and allow for our staff, our actual staff, to answer those more complex calls. Next request that we have is located on line 21.2.2. Similar to the other agencies that have come before you and requested vehicles, this is an item that many agencies over the past several years have not been able to replace. We're no different at the Department of Driver Services. We have 141 vehicles in our fleet. We have currently 129 of them active. And you might ask, what are the use of vehicles in the department's fleet? Each of our 60 centers, 60 plus centers have cars assigned to them. Those staff use those cars to do bank drops. They use those cars to travel from one location to next if we need to job share, which is very often. If a person, for example, is working in Dublin, they also twice a week have to go down to Helena, which is a part-time center that we operate in our agency, and we have 9 other locations that work that way. So we were able to utilize the calculations from the Department of Administrative Services from the standpoint of the total cost of ownership. 71 of our 129 vehicles, active vehicles, or 55%, now exceed the book value of as far as ownership. And that total cost of ownership is basically the vehicle's lifetime depreciation plus the maintenance expenses for the previous fiscal year. So the cars that we do have, we're actually having to take them to the shop and get them fixed and ensure that they're safe to drive for our staff. And I wanted to end just with a highlight, because certainly if you are getting calls this week, it is because we have reached that red January 18, 2021 date in which our agency is now implementing a new drive system. We were in partnership, of course, with the Department of Revenue, and their agency implemented this technology first. DDS has since become live, although we've been working on this. This shows a 15-month graph of what the agency has been doing in order to prepare for this project. But it exists many years prior to that October 2019 date. So this week, our staff is now live. From our staffing standpoint, which we have roughly 600 examiners across the state in the 67 centers. everything about the issuance of a driver's license that they once knew is different. So they are now having to look at completely different screens. Their ability to serve a customer is completely different than what it was last week. And naturally, we were closed last Thursday, last Friday, and as well as last Saturday. So we have about 30,000 demand that wasn't satisfied those days that are trying to get satisfied this week, along with those 14,000, 12 to 14,000 people that come in every day. So this is a challenging week. We knew that it would. We have done our best to educate the public about sending out as paid media as well as social media about the challenges that this week will present. But adoption each day has gotten better. So Wednesday was better than Tuesday. We're reporting today is better than yesterday. So each day we expect that our staff will improve with the system. So if you get those constituent concerns this week, we hope that they are short-lived. And by next week, we will see a substantial reduction in wait time. With that, Mr. Chairman, I certainly I'm here to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Okay. Well, I've got a few real quick ones, and committee members may as well. I want to touch on the vehicles real quick.
Mhm.
I know you're going to be receiving 15, and I think from your slide, is that going to put much of a dent in your need, or are you just replacing vehicles that are inoperable and are already shut down?
You noted that 19 of them are already ready for surplus.
Yes,
sir.
thought I saw that.
Yeah, it will. This will essentially help us at least get those 15 of the 19 surplus vehicles back in operation. We've been fortunate this past year. Obviously, with COVID, that means less travel because normally staff would travel from around the state up to Conyers in order to get their training. So we've had less of that, and we've obviously tried to do more virtual things. So we haven't. This past year has been a year where we got by, but we see those needs coming up, especially as we were preparing for this project and its rollout. We still have to get staff trained.
That's right. I've heard y'all have done a lot of great things with some of the CARES Act money that you received. Could you maybe just tell the committee some of the things that y'all have done as an agency to protect your people and to protect the citizens of Georgia when they come in?
Absolutely. If you've been into a driver services location, you might remember as you walk in, typically that counter did not have glass partitions between the customer and our staff. We did not put temporary plastic up. We hardened our facility by putting in glass partitions that have a thickness to also prevent customers in the case of something that might happen in the center from jumping across the center wall and coming upon our staff. So we're very appreciative for that effort. The glass partitions, a number of PPE efforts has been purchased. We never stopped getting in the trucks of commercial motor vehicles. So in that case, our staff has, they have gowns, they have eyewear, they have masks, obviously. So they have to be properly equipped in order to get into the vehicle of a commercial driver and continue that road test that occurs. So these are many of the things that we've been able to do with some of that CARES Act money.
Good. Chairman Barr, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I am definitely a order of creativity and new things. That being said, I think we could probably all say we've had a less than great experience with a virtual type assistant when we call for support. So I'm just curious if there are other agencies that are using the new technology that you're talking about, and If not, is there other areas that perhaps you could direct us to that are using something like this so we can maybe test it out? This is one of those areas that, you know, for when I first arrived in the legislature a few years ago, I got a lot of calls over your department. Since, you know, the last few years, it's definitely gotten so much better. I rarely ever receive a call with a complaint. So thank you for your hard work, but those are my questions.
Yes, sir. You asked very, very good questions. First of all, yes, some of this technology obviously is in the is being used. We were able to join the Georgia Technology Authority when COVID hit to get on what's called a chat bot that did help with answering some of these questions that customers had. The difference of this technology, Mr. Chairman, the difference in it is it's not just a computer sounding type technology. It's artificial intelligence. So it's a voice that doesn't sound like a computer, but it sounds like you and I. So this technology, and I'll give an example of something that you may have seen in commercial, and that's the IBM Watson technology. You actually hear the voice of a human, but the caller doesn't know that it's not a human that's answering the call. It's actually a trained chat bot that is answering the individual with the answers that they are seeking. Again, this is a supplement. It would not replace our current call center agents. They answer a lot of calls, but as I noted in the slide, we're nearly double the number of calls that we were getting in the past at this point. Obviously, asking for additional 50 plus agents, which is what it would take in order to answer these calls in the ongoing cost that would create. This is the best solution that we think the department can take in order to mitigate some of those extensive call volumes and call waits that customers are currently having around the state.
Okay, well, thank you, Commissioner. I know I could kind of speak to that. I had a constituent that reached out. I think they were on hold for about 75 minutes. But they did say when they did get to the representative, they were very helpful and had a very good experience as they went through that process. But they did have to wait a long time.
And that's typical these days, and that's why we want to get those numbers back down. We were, prior to COVID, we were very close to answering more than 85% of our calls in 3 minutes or less. So now we're going the opposite direction because we just can't handle the volume.
Right. I wanted to ask too, while I've got you, I know we heard some of the same stuff from EPD, and I know you have difficulties with turnover and morale and your staff, and I know in EPD's area they're losing their employees to another federal agency. In your case, you're losing employees and you have turnover. Who are you losing your employees to?
Well,
is it the private sector? Is it where are they going? Are they just finding better offers? I guess more money.
well, and just think about it. We have a higher turnover rate, obviously in the urban areas than we do in the rural areas. But a starting salary of an examiner is $22,695, which equates to about $10.50 an hour. Where are they going? They probably in the Atlanta area, they can go to most convenient restaurants and things like that and make more than $10 an hour. So we really see the staff that are here and maintain that stay keep the retention for a while. It's the benefits that draw them to service. So we've really been a proponent of keeping the benefits as great as possible if we can increase the staff, because the call center agent, obviously, that number is even less. It's $9.86, I want to say, per hour. So you can get in just about any call center and be competitive or get a greater rate of pay per hour than that number here. So we're losing them to private sector mainly. We have lost investigators in the past to other state agencies, but since the legislature basically created that equity in pay among law enforcement, we haven't seen that number of reduction in that particular staff component.
So you're losing staff to McDonald's and Burger King.
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's very unfortunate. But anybody else got any questions? Chairman Parsons.
Yes, sir. I think I've got this mute button on. I wanted to ask, I think that he's answered the questions about why these lines were long over the last couple of days. I know that I'd been down in Riverdale the other day and I didn't even pass the Georgia State Patrol. I guess that's where they were doing the testing. I couldn't even wonder what was going on. There's a line all around the place. But then I actually got an email from this. I haven't heard anything about any problem with driver services forever. And I got this email from some people here in the district, and they were talking about the lines, which I think you've answered questions about that because of the system, and they seem to have even acknowledged that somebody had said it was a system issue. But my question is about the amount of time to the schedule. According to this person, it's taking, like she said, for her son, it took like 3 months to get him to get an appointment for him to be tested. I'm just wondering, that's the thing I want to actually ask about. Is that factual or?
That may be factual if she did not choose an option of going to a location that's not closest to her. And the reason for that, Chairman Parsons, is COVID-19, obviously. Our ability to handle customers as quickly as we once did has gone down since COVID-19. We can only have so many people in the building. We have an appointment model, but we also serve those who don't have an appointment. So, and what's happening here lately is the people without an appointment, we're getting more requests for people who don't have an appointment than those who do. So as far as road test, if it was a road test, in all likelihood, and the other part of that, if that's the case, for example, we may have had 10 machines that were once conducting knowledge tests inside of the center. We can only now use 5 because we have to have a space in between each of those computer workstations in order to maintain that social distancing. So yeah, that's in large part, COVID-19 has really hurt our ability to keep things as fast as we once had them.
Yeah, she was talking about the road test, and she said Marietta, but I think she's probably talking about the one up here in Ackworth. But that's the thing kind of got me. Oh my gosh, that can't be true. But you got to wait that long to get an appointment. Anyway, that was my question.
Not in Ackworth, not in Kennesaw. So I'm wondering if she actually looked at the right location. Marietta is a pretty tough site to get one, but not in Ackworth typically. But what I'll do is we'll follow up with you and tell you how quickly a person can get a.
All right. I would agree. I've actually got to get back to this lady. So yeah, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We will provide that information to you.
Commissioner, I've got another follow-up. I know we've got some legislation that we're going to get going to change some of the fees on the reinstatement licenses that are lost or have to be replaced. Do you have an idea of how much that's going to generate for the state? And I think, if I'm correct, it's costing you more to replace them and make them than we're actually receiving from the folks that are having to pay for that.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna turn to Michelle and see if she has a projection on what the total projection per year of lost license might be. And the request is to change the fee from $5 to $10 for a lost license. And like you said, it's simply because the state's losing money. The cost of the replacement is not, we're not collecting enough money to actually replace it. So we're hoping that by increasing that fee from $5 to $10, that we will at least break even. The other cost is to change the limited permit from $25 to the normal licensing fee of $32. The same level of effort that goes into printing that limited permit is the same level that goes into every other issuance. So kind of unfair that if you've been penalized in the criminal justice system and can get a limited permit, that it costs less than what a citizen who is obeying the law is having to pay in order to get their reinstatement or renewal.
Well, thank you for touching on that, and I look forward to working with you guys on that. And I don't see any more questions, but I do just want to again thank you for the job y'all do. Y'all truly do more with less, and we're going to always continue to fight for you guys. And you know, your people are almost frontline workers right now at some point in time, and they're making sure that our roads are safe and that our families are safe and people are on the roads that are supposed to be on the roads. And so appreciate the job y'all do. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Next up, we've got the Department of Labor. Commissioner Butler, are you with us?
Yep, give me a second. Trying to figure this
Save
out.
the best for last, Commissioner.
I don't know about all that. All right. Well, you know, he looked through the budget document. There really no changes, and we didn't expect any anyway. So right now, most of our work is at least for the time being is mostly federally funded, still through the CARES Act and other things as we go forward. So basically, I've got a little presentation, if I can figure out how to make it appear on my screen, and we'll try to go through that as quick as possible and save time for questions at the end. Is that all right, Mr. Chairman?
That sounds perfect.
All right, hold on a second. Now, I've only done this once before, so hold on. All right, I'm hoping you can see it, right?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right. Whoop. All right, here we go. Okay, well, let's try to go through this as best we can. As you see, we've experienced a massive amount of workload during this. And the main reason for that is if you go back to the CARES Act that was passed in last March, basically 85% of probably everything in that bill that's supposed to help the public was funneled through the Department of Labor's around the nation, which you know, and you go the month before all the CARES Act was passed, pretty much all the states around the nation were experiencing record low numbers of claims. I know we were. We had probably set records for the previous 4 months prior for the least amount of claims filed in a 1 month period. Records which had stood in place since 1974, which, you know, obviously population was a lot smaller in 1974. That tells you how strong the economy was and how few people were on unemployment. The problem with that is unemployment is basically mainly funded through the number of claims. And so most Department of Labors around the nation were also working off some of the lowest funding that they had seen in decades. And some of the lowest staffing levels, and we were included. You know, when all this hit, we had a little over 1,000 individuals that were working at Department of Labor. Not all of those worked in unemployment. We do run a lot of other programs here. Matter of fact, it was, I think, right around 330 individuals were actually really just in unemployment at that time. And so, you know, we've been kind of struggled to kind of keep that number even at that level. Due to the fact we had some pretty high turnover because of funding issues. We were having a very hard time competing with the private sector, doing what we do, especially in some of our more skilled areas. And so, you know, it kind of hit us at the worst possible time. Of course, when the CARES Act passed, not only were we in charge of making sure all of those that were working that got laid off because of the pandemic shutdowns, but they also created a whole lot of new programs that had never even been attempted. One of them was the PUA program, which was the unemployment insurance. Well, I should say insurance. It wasn't an insurance policy. It was basically a payment that was put out there for those that had never paid in any unemployment taxes, self-employed and things like that. However, they wanted to kind of run it like regular unemployment insurance in the fact that we had to gather somebody's financial information, take that information, come up with a benefit amount, and then, you know, pay that out. That system or that type of thing that they were asking, and this is true for all states, that type of system did not exist at the time, and I guess Congress didn't know that. And so all the states all of a sudden had to go and either hire somebody, or luckily for us here in Georgia, this Department of Labor has its own IT staff and programs. We were able to program our own, which is why we were one of the first to get it off the ground, to come up and basically build a system from scratch. And so, we've had to not only build that system, but 4 others. And then this recent thing that Congress just passed also had some new, very complicated programs in it. One of which is going to be even more complicated to build than the PUA program. And that's going to be another challenge that we're going to be facing. Talking about turnover rates, this is very interesting. So you take a look at, FY20, our turnover rate did go down significantly, went down to 13%, and it's gone down even more in 21. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we are giving some pretty heavy incentives right now for people to stay at the Department of Labor. We're using our CARES Act money to give temporary bumps in pay, also seriously enhanced overtime pay. And which is something you're going to have to do when you're enticing somebody to work through holidays, also work on weekends, which is what we've been doing. We've been working 7 days a week pretty much since this started. And we have to, because you're talking about a massive amount of work that we've been asked to do. And we'll get into that a little bit later. However, the new hires that we've been trying to pull in, which has been very difficult, it's very high. We thought hiring before the pandemic was tough. Hiring during a pandemic is even harder, mainly because a lot of individuals that we're targeting that did get laid off permanently, they're actually making as much, if not more, on unemployment than what even our enhanced pay for some of our higher positions actually pays. And so, it's kind of hard to convince somebody, unless they're really motivated, to give up staying at home for the same amount of money. Also, right now, as of the first of this year, in our current staff that we have right now that are trained, able to do the job, 25% of our current staff is eligible for retirement right now, which is a little bit scary. Luckily, because of how we've enhanced the pay, they're sticking around because they're making more money than they've ever made since they've been working here. All right, here's some numbers. We want to get into some stuff that kind of gets off of the budget, but this is some stuff you guys need to know as you do in your planning for basically the entire budget, because we have a big part in what we've been doing over here and how it's affecting the state's revenues. We have sent out since last March, over $17 billion in unemployment payments around Georgia. And we did that in 44 weeks. That is more money sent out in 44 weeks than the last 34 years combined. Okay, let that sink in. That's a lot of money, 44 weeks right there, okay, being sent out. We sent over $600 million to the Department of Revenue and tax withholdings. Normally, during a regular year, we only send about 10 or 12 million. So keep that in mind, that 600 million right there, because we're going to show you some slides here in just a second that kind of talk about, who these individuals are that are unemployed. Now, let's talk about some things. We're going to go look way back in the past when we had the extra 600 that was going out. And also then we have now they brought some of that back at half or the 300 and go, what does that mean? And you'll see why we had some hard times finding people to come to work, and also why other individual or other companies have been having a hard time during the pandemic, filling a lot of their jobs, which we do have a record number of jobs right now currently on Employ Georgia. If you were somebody getting the maximum amount of unemployment, which you only had to hit about $30,000 a year to do, you were getting the 365 from Georgia, the extra 600 from the feds, which gets you right under $1,000 a week. That's $50,000 a year equivalent salary, or $24 an hour. Even if you were getting the minimum from state UI, which was 55 plus the 600, which gets you at 655 a week. That's the equivalent of about $34,000 a year, or over $16 an hour. Now, what makes that one even more startling is to qualify for that minimum 55, you basically, and I'm kind of making this oversimplified, you basically only had to show about $2,500 in income over the last 6 quarters. Okay, so or at least 2 out of the last 6 quarters. And so, you didn't make a whole lot, and you got a big raise if you were making $2,500 last year, and now you're making the equivalent of 34,000. PUA, the minimum was different for PUA, which that's for the self-employed. Their minimum was 149, and then you can see the equivalents, 38,000, $18 an hour. And right now, with the extra 300 that they've got in this new legislation, which we are already paying out, that gets you the equivalent of about a $34,000 a year job or a $16 an hour job, which in some cases you're going to have some individuals that maybe even got a raise that got laid off or not currently working. Not as big as you did in the previous when they were at 600, but it comes pretty close. Now, who are we talking about? This is a snapshot from 1 month during the fall. And as you'll see right here, this is where it gets kind of startling right here. When you're talking about, who's on unemployment, you're talking about 90, right at 91% of everybody on UI was making $30,000 or less. Okay. And then you're talking about, 76% were making less than about $8,300 a year. Now, if you remember that previous slide, we'll go back to it real quick, and you see the type of money that they were getting in equivalents in unemployment, something you guys need to be thinking about going forward, because a lot of that $600 million that we sent over to revenue, when people will start filing taxes, there's going to be probably a record amount of refunds that are going to be sent out based upon what we're seeing right here. Okay. So even though we sent over 600 million, you've got to think a lot of that money is going to go right back out the door in refunds. Hopefully some of that's going to be mitigated because a lot of those individuals may have went out and spent a lot of that money. And you may have gotten it back in sales tax, which is not going to be refundable. So something you need to be wary of. Obviously, it's not going to affect the small budget, but the big budget is something that I would really be thinking hard about how this is going to affect. And revenue is going to have to be the one to tell you when they start sending out refund checks. But we believe it's going to be a large amount. One of the other side effects that we have seen because of the pretty generous UI benefits that were put out last year, it has changed expectations in the public for what they make. And a lot of companies have adapted to that. I've spoke to and worked with a lot of companies that have said they have had to increase the amount of money that they're paying for entry level. Talked to a guy, actually I was referring somebody to a company this last July. And it was a company that I knew for a fact started off at $15 an hour, just walking off the street, with no experience. Matter of fact, you could even have, you don't even have to have your GED, and they start you off at $15 an hour. And I was referring to somebody, and the guy let me know that they'd actually had to raise their pay to $17.50 an hour to attract people because they were having a hard time hiring at $15 an hour, even with some of the lower qualifications. So something you guys might want to chew on and think about as you go forward. He goes, well, how were we able to pay all this out and get all this done? First of all, we had to bring in a lot of contractor staff. We had a lot of returning retirees that we brought back, which was great because they already had expertise, no training. All the temporary staff had to be trained. We had a little bit higher turnover in temporary staff that came from contractors than some of the others. And also we redirected a lot of current staff that had been doing other things. We retrained them to do UI. We basically doubled our internal UI staff in about 2 months. Went from about 300 something to about 700. But still, when you're talking about, 4 million claims being filed and about 2.1 of those actually being valid claims, 2.1 million, that's a lot to have to deal with. We also had to change a lot of the processes. Some of that because of some of the new legislation and different programs, but also because, we're dealing with a different type of error. We're dealing with, touchless and going to, changing a lot of things that you used to have to mail in or, scan in or whatever. A lot of our online process have changed, which that goes to technology. I cannot say enough about our technology department over here that is run by a former House member, Jeff May. They have been nothing short of miracle workers in what they've been able to pull off, writing some of the code. Currently right now, they're having to make some more miracles happen with a lot of these changes that Congress just passed in December. But what they've been able to do in a short amount of time is nothing short of a miracle. If you had to pay an outside company to do what they've done, you're probably talking a $20 to $30 million project. And that's no lie, no exaggeration. I know this because I've seen a lot of quotes for UI systems, and they basically have built the equivalent of 3 UI systems in the last 44 weeks. In the department, you want to talk about our people and the dedication they've had. which is something I really wish we would get more attention from. We've had a lot of people speak negative about our people, but I think they should be held up as heroes. These are folks who have been working 7 days a week through holidays. They've sacrificed a lot of time away from their families. And in some cases, we've had a lot of them get sick. We've had 91 department-wide COVID positives, even though we have restricted the public from coming into our offices. We've had 7 hospitalizations and 2 deaths. Because of some of these positive tests, we've had to temporarily close people coming into the physical offices 47 times in the last 44 weeks. But even doing all that, we have logged over 230,000 hours, right at 234,000 hours of overtime. And we're doing this with less than half the staff that we had during the recession of 2010. And the workload is about 10 times as much, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. You can add up all of the stuff during the recession. You can take 3 years, and it didn't even come close to what we've been able to do in just this 44 weeks. Like I said, I talked about this earlier about the cross training and also IT staff, and the call volume. We've had a large number of call volume. People say, why can't y'all just answer the phones? Well, let's talk about this just for a second. And people say, well, you guys must not be doing a very good job because we're getting all these phone calls. Well, when you're talking about the sheer numbers that we're having to deal with and all the new programs and how complicated Congress has made it, it doesn't take much to get your call volume up really high. If you're talking about the fact right now, out of all the claims that have been filed, you got 2.1 million valid claims. If we get 99% of them dead on right, perfect, but 1% has issues, that's 21,000 people. 21,000 people that are calling all at the same time 4 and 5 times a day. But now that's unrealistic. We know that number's probably not 99%. It's probably closer to about 94, 95% are getting it correct. So, you're talking 105,000 people that need help because there's something wrong with their claim. And when you only have, you say we've got our UI staff up to, even with, extra staff, up to 1,000, you can only dedicate about 100, 150 people to answering the phones at any given time that had the expertise to actually fix a problem. Hiring call centers with people that don't know anything about UI and how to actually go into the system and fix the issue, they don't get you anywhere. It's like the old story. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's what we've had to do. It has been very trying on our staff. They've been under unbelievable stress almost for a year now. Quite frankly, they're heroes and need to be held up as such. And I've heard a lot of stories about personal loss that some of these people have had. Family members have died, and they're showing back up to work, and they're out there trying to help Georgians every single day. They may not be first responders, but they're pretty freaking close. And I can't say enough about their dedication and what they've been able to do. And with that, and with some of the things that we did that were unlike any other state, I don't know if you guys saw some of the news articles that just came out here last month, and it was talking about that Georgia's personal income decreased the least amount of any other state during the third quarter. And I think a lot of that has to do with the work right here at Georgia Department of Labor with some of the things that we did that were innovative, like a $300 exception to income. We know that at one time we had about 70% of the individuals who were on unemployment had also gone back and were working part-time. And I think that really helped us out with our economy, keeping people at work. When you take a look, the fact that we were you saw personal income only drop by 0.6% during the third quarter, whereas the nation's personal income dropped by 10%, and we were at 0.6%. The closest state to us was 3 times higher. Okay, that's something that not enough people are talking about, and I think it's done a great job, especially with the help that we've got from the governor's office and doing a lot of these changes, which had to be done through emergency rule, and they've had a tremendous effect. Trust fund real quick. We were in good shape before this started, but not now. A lot of people, a lot of money. Right now, we currently have a trust loan balance of, or excuse me, a trust fund balance of 8.5 million. We've had to borrow. We have the governor's office help us out with some CARES Act money. We've been able to pay back some of this, and we're hoping to keep the borrowing to a minimum. The biggest amount of our collections do not start until April. The first quarter is our largest collection time for unemployment. However, we're not going to see, big chunks because we did freeze people's rates if they had to lay off individuals due to COVID. And so their rate was not affected. And that's going to help our economy recover because these businesses that are struggling to come back are not going to get hit with big increases on their unemployment taxes. However, it's going to make paying this back or getting our trust fund back to where it was, which was at $2.6 billion this time last year. It's going to take a while to get there. However, we're on our way. We're getting folks back to work. Georgia's got an unemployment rate of 5.6%, and I expect that to keep going down. As right now, we have over 170,000 jobs sitting out there right now on Employ Georgia. We're going to do, right now we're already pivoting, getting folks back to work. Here soon, we're going to put back in place the work search requirement for folks on unemployment. However, we're having to reprogram that system because of some of these new laws and new benefits and how they're structured. And so the old system we had does not work with this current stuff that we're doing right now. And so we're having to reprogram that also. But as soon as we can, we're going to start helping push folks back to work and using different things like Employ Georgia, really getting our veteran staff out there and enhancing their abilities. And obviously, we've always been, had a great working relationship with the Technical College System of Georgia and Georgia Department of Economic Development using our customized recruitment. And obviously, helping these kids coming out of the schools with Georgia Best and Georgia's Jobs for Georgia graduates. Like I said, there's over 170,000 jobs listed on Employ Georgia right now. And people say, oh, those are all really bad jobs. No, they're not. These are anywhere from $10, $75 an hour to $30,000, $100,000 salaries. We've got, as you can see on that screen, I don't have to read them off to you. You can read them. A lot of employers are hiring. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that most of you, when you're back home and you're in your district, you're seeing help wanted signs up everywhere. At least that's what I'm seeing back at home. And I've seen a lot of companies that have held their pay down for years, running ads in the paper and everywhere else saying, hey, we've changed our pay structure. We're paying more. Matter of fact, one of the plants, it's a food service plant in my hometown. I was looking at this morning in our little shopper paper, and they've got $1,000 signing bonus right now, which I've never seen them advertise that before. They were usually one of the lower paying places in Carrollton, and what I understand, they pushed up their pay. They got signing bonuses and everything else. They also, I think, they're giving their current employees referral bonuses that are pretty high. So, I mean, I think we're getting there. The things we're going to be worried about right now is some of these things that are being passed out of Washington competing with some of our employers. We've also got to worry about and heavily worry about inflation. I've been saying this since last summer. I think inflation is going to be a big issue going forward because of all when all these companies are having to push up their pay, which is good for the worker, and we're glad to see that. However, there's a price to pay at the end of that. That means that the chicken is going to cost more at the grocery store. That car is going to cost more at the lot. Those services you're getting from somebody else, all that stuff is going to go up, and I think we need to be planning for that and thinking about that as we go forward. And that's it.
Commissioner, thank you. That was a very good report. And I can definitely speak to that people aspect because I use a lot of people in my business and couldn't do it without them. And they're very important to what we do. So please send a thank you to all your staff. I know I did spend one night at the Sheraton with Chairman England, and then I had to go somewhere else, but I did see your people going to work. And there wasn't a lot of people going to work downtown at that time even. So we appreciate the job they were doing and helping folks across our state. Do we have any questions from the committee? You must have got all the questions for the most part.
They're just tired of listening to me.
Yeah, well, it's getting kind of late. I do have one quick question. It's dealing with the information for the CAFR funds and getting all of that rounded up and put together. Do you have a status on that?
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear that. It was a breakup on that when you were talking. The what now?
The CAFR funds, information for reporting on the CAFR funds, the report, the annual report.
We'd already submit that, but I think they're wanting to come back and ask for information they've never asked for on the federal programs. And the amount of programming that's going to take is extraordinary. And so we're in talks with them to find out why it is that they're going to need this additional stuff. To give you an idea, we would probably have to stop all work on current programs that we're trying to get in there to pay claimants right now for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. And that's a lot to ask right now, but we already submitted the stuff that we normally submit. And we've already been in contact with, I think it was Alan Skelton and Greg Griffin. I mean, they know the situation.
Okay. Well, I know those, I mean, those are a lot of federal funds, but if there's fraud with those funds, where does that money come to pay that back? Is that state funds, or do y'all hold back funds, or how does that?
Now, if you're talking about, well, look, every state is going to have fraud on the PUA system because it was designed so poorly by Congress and by the U.S. Department of Labor. And it's 100% their money. But the thing is, how they designed it, they almost built it to have fraud basically committed to it. I mean, so it's going to, I mean, they're going to have to share the blame on that right there. Because we've actually pointed out certain situations to them and said, hey, look, we shouldn't be paying these people right here because we don't believe that they should be getting it. And they're like, well, no, you got to pay it because that's what the rules say. But anyway, I think what's getting crossed up is the money they're talking about for those federal programs does not run through the state's unemployment trust fund. It's in a different account. So it has nothing to do with the trust fund. So I think that's where some wires are getting crossed.
Okay, I got you. All right, I don't see any more questions, but again, thank you, Commissioner, for the job y'all do over there. I know y'all have been working really hard over the last 12 months almost to keep people rolling, and we appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
All right. Members, that concludes this meeting. Appreciate everybody being on here. We will meet again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So I hope everyone got the information on that. Look forward to seeing you then. Before we close, I just want to thank David for his hard work in organizing these meetings, and the House Media Office and everybody that's made this available for us to do it this way and keep everybody safe. So if nobody's got anything else, we will talk to y'all in the morning. Thank you.